For many years now, the global elite have been pushing their agenda on us. They have a very specific vision for how they want the world to be. Now, this is not a conspiracy theory like big tech would want you to think. This is a verifiable fact. It's an objective truth that is happening everywhere you look, and you don't have to believe me. You can literally take it from the horse's mouth. People like our good friends Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab, along with countless other celebrities, have no qualms about saying this. They are more than happy to let us know that they want the rest of the world to live in a very specific way. While they continue living their luxurious lifestyles, for example, Bill Gates will come out and say, people need to reduce their carbon footprint. Then they ought to consider eating alternatives to meat. Meanwhile, we see him every day flying around the world in a private jet, most likely eating filet mignon or whatever else he's concocting in his Windows-sponsored lifestyle. Then there's Klaus Schwab, who heads the World Economic Forum. He's publicly advocated for depopulation. We're not supposed to say that here, but he says it out of his own mouth. He also talks about the importance of eating bugs and the Great Reset, something that was unfamiliar 2 years ago, but is our everyday experience. Celebrities like Leonardo DiCaprio, oh, he was so good in the Titanic. Well, our ship is starting to sink because he's made documentaries on the severity of climate change. Yet, as we see him, along with every other hypocrite, he happily flies around the world in his private Gulfstream to meet his cronies in Davos. The list goes on and on. They want to do away with everything that you love that makes your life convenient, including gas-powered vehicles. They want people to cram together in more and more compact cities, like where some experiment in a lab rat in China. They want people to follow very specific hate speech laws as well. I'm sure you're familiar with that here on YouTube. And they want us all to be automatons who never go beyond the limits of permitted speech and thought. These people ultimately want to be guided and guide us in every aspect of our lives. What you do, how you act, and what you think. They want to control you. They want to influence you, and they want to benefit from you all the while. Again, this is not something I'm making up. This is a verifiable fact. I'm just repeating what they themselves have stated. They are not merely suggestions from the elite. However, they are actively pursuing their agenda in the media, in the economy, and most significantly in politics. A cursory glance around the world will give you an indication of what is coming our way. Don't get too comfortable, because often policy and social reforms that take place in the United States have already been tested anywhere or pretty much elsewhere in the world that you could think. We can look to places like Canada, Israel, New Zealand, and Australia to name a few. Which leads me into our topic of discussion tonight. As a general rule of thumb, what happens in places like Australia usually makes its way around to the US in about 3 months if you're counting. For many of us, COVID has become a thing of the past. And it would seem that the powers that be in the United States are finally letting go of COVID. Articles from The Atlantic say it's time for a COVID amnesty. We must forgive, forget, and move on. There's no indication of any new restrictions or lockdowns in the future. However, if you look abroad, there are some puzzling and frankly concerning signs. Both Australia and China are currently building new COVID quarantine centers, or daycares for adults. And I would use the term center loosely. It's more of a, well, we can't use the word on YouTube type of situation, so I'll say place outside to store lots of people. They'll be able to ship up to, in some cases, 30,000 individuals to these centers for their convalescence. We've already seen Australia do it before in the last couple years, so this is not a new phenomenon to say the least. They did this in the spring of 2021. They set up the centers on taxpayer dollars, and people were literally shipped there against their will. They had no ability to refuse going, and they were not particularly treated well in these places. And if you're like me, you would say, well, why are they building new ones? Isn't COVID over? That would seem to be a fairly reasonable question, but clearly they have something planned for this winter, which is kind of strange because it's about to be summer in Australia. And summer isn't exactly the flu season, right? That shouldn't be the time when COVID is at its lowest. So the question is, what exactly is going on there? What is the pretext for building these new centers? Is there some sort of spike in COVID rates the CDC understands or the WHO that they're not telling us? Is there scientific evidence showing that this summer in Australia is going to be a serious one, that we need more thousands of people stowed away in camps from their families, from their homes, and even their jobs, just so that they can heal and save the rest of the world? And the same question could be raised in China. Who is doing the exact same thing? Do the Chinese know something about COVID we don't? Again, what is the pretext for building these? You can see in this clip here, which is from China, that this is a serious project they're putting together. This is not a rinkety-dink setup. It's a very permanent looking facility here. And given the population of China and the nature of the Chinese government, I'm sure this isn't the only such facility being built right now. In fact, I have a feeling that there are quite a few of these being put up. How many of these exactly are there for COVID? And how many are in reality not for COVID at all, but are for political prisoners, racial prisoners, or simple criminals? If anything like this were built under a different pretext other than COVID, there would be outrage. And we know exactly what it would be compared to. They would be screaming in the streets, this is fascism all over again. Moreover, we know that COVID doesn't warrant the construction of something like this anyway, after we've seen survival rates. It certainly doesn't warrant taking people from their homes, from their families, and quarantining them against their will, right? So again, this raises the question, what is going on here? What do these people know that we don't? And is there some sort of plan that we're missing? I mean, what is this? Now the question becomes, will we see something like this in America this winter? Are we going to see FEMA centers set up for COVID-positive patients to be shipped away to? Something like that seems highly unlikely at the moment, but perhaps we've all been lured into a false sense of security. If you go back to the summer of 2020, many of the COVID restrictions were eased up quite a bit before being brought back twice as strong. A little relief before they smashed down the hammer. A little like being in Paul Pelosi's house at 2 a.m. Once you start thinking about that and you take into consideration all these warning signs abroad, it certainly makes the mind wonder if Biden's dark winter might be just around the corner at all. That's important before we go any further to remind you that things are looking bad in our country. And yes, the world is out of control. And before we go any further, I need to tell you about something important. The dollar's lost almost 40% of its value or more over the last decade, depending on who you ask. In fact, the stock market is crashing so quickly, it feels like we're in 2008 all over again. Experts suggest that there's going to be a recession in store, which is why you need to act fast to protect your savings, your retirement, and to invest in your future with gold and silver from my friends at Goldco. Now, if you call 855-242-4758 right now, that's 855-242-4758, you can talk to them and you can find out how you can get up to $10,000 in free silver. Now, over the last several decades, gold and silver have not only retained their value, they've went up 1,000, 2,000% or more. And the most important part is that when you invest in gold and silver, you're getting something physical for your value, not these numbers that change or digital earmarks that can completely be deleted when the economy collapses. This is hard gold and silver and a way to invest in your future. You can't control gas prices, you can't even control food prices, but you can control where you put your investments and savings. Click the link in the bio right now, fill out the form and contact them, or call 855-242-4758 and find out how my friends at Goldco can help you hedge against the future and protect yourself from what might be in store. Invest in gold and silver with my friends at Goldco in one of the best decisions that you can make of your life. Call 855-242-4758 or click the link in the description. Again, call 855-242-4758. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect yourself and your savings.